Hello beauties, Shaz here, and today I'm going to reveal to you all 20 shades that I've hand selected from my gigantic Sydney Grace collection. 10 mattes and 10 shimmers that I'm gonna swatch for you all, and I'm going to use only these in 5 eye looks, including the one that I'm wearing. And maybe throughout this video you realize you need some of these shades, or maybe you realize you need all of them, or maybe you realize you have some of them or that you don't need any of them. But hopefully they will make you make better purchase decisions during the Sydney Grace sale that is starting on July 29th. If that sounds good, as always, give us thumbs up and let's get into the video. This video is supposed to be sort of a cross between some of my favorite shades and sort of more unique shades that I've seen from Sydney Grace that I haven't really seen a lot of dupes in other brands, and making a custom-made palette. Because, as I mentioned, I'm going to use only these shades in doing 5 eye looks later in the video. I'm also going to show you what color combinations you can pick among these if you just want to make eye looks on your own outside of those 5 looks. With that said, let's get started swatching. Our first shade is Deliverer. These shades are in no particular order, and as I mentioned, these are just shades that I found kind of unique. This to me is a very romantic purple, and it kind of from some angles has a hint of gold. Our next shade is Glitz and Glamour, which is another beautiful purple shimmer. This one is more lavender than the previous one, and it's a super romantic shade. Our next shade is Buttermilk, and it's such a difficult to describe shade. It's one of those shades that kind of stands between a shimmer and a matte, but it has a sheen, which is why I put it amongst the shimmers. And I love using this in my inner corner if I don't want something super bright. Also, something that's very unique about this shimmer is that amazingly it does not accentuate the texture on my eyelids, which is what I love. And it's a great soft inner corner highlight. I love Sydney Grace shimmers. I find them so creamy and extremely easy to use and very, very pigmented. As you can see here, this beautiful shade is Dive, one of my favorite shades from them. You can see that this is a duochrome with a beautiful blue-green, sort of a tealy undertone, and a very beautiful shift of gold over it. This one is another one of those that to me stands between a matte and a shimmer, but much more shimmery than Buttermilk. This is called Tangy Citrus, or is it Tangy? Anyway, this one is yellow in the pan but has a hue of green, and I think you can see the hue of green in the swatch. And this is another one of those super awesome and untextured shimmers that is an amazing inner corner highlights. I use this in one of the looks in my inner corner. I love this shade. Maybe you can call this a satin. This one is Tiara, which is a beautiful shimmery taupe. I can't imagine a look where you use this shade and the look doesn't come out amazing. I forgot to mention this earlier, but I've mostly used cool tone shades because it's the year of cool tones. So I constructed this palette using mostly cool tones and specifically picked this cool tone brown shimmer because cool tone brown shimmers particularly are extremely rare. And this rare find is Rover. Deep minty green shimmer is not a shade I see frequently, and I know for a fact I don't own this kind of a shade in my single collection. I think this is probably the only such a shade that I own. This is Cadet, and it's absolutely gorgeous, as you can see. A red shimmer is another type of a shade that you don't see very frequently, particularly bright reds like this. I think a lot of people are afraid of using bright reds Now this one is Coral Reef and Fair. It's supposed to represent coral, so it's a little bit more corally than red, but nonetheless a super, super unique shade and absolutely gorgeous. Celebrate is our next shimmer, which is a beautiful, beautiful lime green. This one is a tad deeper than a lot of lime greens I see, yet it has a gorgeous gold shift. Frankly, even in the pan, you can see the shift of gold. If you are looking for a bright matte yellow, Geese Allaying is a huge recommendation of mine. Just look at it. Such a beautiful shade. Another one is Thunderbird, which is a deep gray that has a hint of blue. I really hope the camera captures the hint of blue. It's a beautiful and super, super unique shade. Our next one is Harvest, which is a beautiful brick orangey red. I was also using this in the look you saw earlier in the video. This shade has amazing pigmentation and it blends out beautifully. It's ideal for fall looks, particularly combined with Geese Laying. Our next shade is Unpredictable, which is a beautiful plummy purple. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to use this one in a look for this video, but I've enjoyed using this in other looks that I made for myself. It's a beautiful, beautiful, and super unique shade. This one is Officer, which is such a unique shade because it's a deep gray with a plum sort of shift. You can see the plum in the swatch, thankfully, which is what I love about this shade because you can use it for deepening any blue or purple or a red looks or even other kinds of looks. It's such a beautiful, unique shade. Our next shade is Nightfall, which as you can see is such a beautiful blue shade. Now this one, similar to pretty much all blues, is a little bit drier than the other ones and has a little bit more kick up. There's something about how blue shades are manufactured that creates that, so I wouldn't be too alarmed about it, but just letting you know if you really dislike shades that have a lot of kick up. You're going to see me use this in a look and you're going to see it have kick up in the look also. But this kind of a shade is pretty unique in my collection. I like how this is such a different sort of cool toned blue. Our next shade is Regal, which is a beautiful lavender, ideal for making any sort of purple look amazing. Our next shade is Red Start, which is a gorgeous orange matte. I stopped saying the matte part because you all know that I'm swatching mattes. This is another one of those shades that is ideal for the fall. Reminds me of pumpkins. Moon Landing is sort of a dusty, super light taupe. Ideal if you are into this whole cool tone palettes that are becoming the thing nowadays and are trying to either dupe them or making your own custom-made palettes. This kind of a shade is seen in a lot of these palettes and you can use it as a dupe. It's a beautiful, beautiful shade. And last but not least, we have a Bravo, which is a deep military green. You can see the depth of the shade at this end. Such a beautiful shade. This would be a great shade for using in a lot of palettes. If you're like me, trying to dupe palettes instead of buying and owning all of them. And here is a close-up of the palette so you can see the shades and what they look like in their pan. Because I can't do all the possible eyeshadow looks using this palette, and I know that this palette is going to confuse some of you all just looking at it, I'm going to explain to you what are some possible matching of colors that you can do for eye looks. If you want to go the monotone route, you can start with the purples, so you could use these shades in a look. Another option is to use the greens in a look. So you could use these this green and then this shimmer that has a hue of green in a look. You could just do the combination of reds and oranges. Now this is not fully monotone, but you could do that. Maybe you even add a little bit of reddish brown to deepen out your outer V area. Another thing you can do is just going neutral, which would include using some of these more neutrally brownish sort of shades. Maybe you can add some yellow to lighten that look up. You could also go blue, so you could use that blue with this blue and maybe this color in the outer V, or even some brown in the outer V. Another neutral option is to use these shades, including this taupey or this brown shade. Yeah, there are a lot of options with this palette, even if you just want to do monotones. Another option would be to try to do complements. So you can, for example, pick the orange, red, and yellow, even with this red, maybe even with this color buttercream. You could even add some neutrals to deepen out the outer V. Another complementary option is to use the purples and lavenders with the blue. Not to forget that this shade, I don't know if the camera's showing it, has a beautiful shift of blue. Or you can use the greens with the blue and the yellow and even some of these cream colors. And if you want to go all the way to complementary shades, obviously the first thing that just pops out is the blue with the orange. In fact, I've done a pretty popular blue and orange look on my Instagram that I did in one of my to buy or not to buys. I'll tag that on the screen for you all. You could almost replicate that look with this palette using a not super blue shade in the outer V. And then of course you do have the purples and the yellow as your other complementary set, or you can use the red and the greens. So this palette, although it might look confusing in one look, now that you can recognize all the different color schemes that exist in here, it becomes a lot simpler to figure out what eye looks you can make. Now let's jump into some examples. I've primed with Glam Shop Primer. Let's go into this color for my crease. We're gonna start with simple, almost monotone looks. And now I'm gonna use this one to deepen out my outer V. And this one is a lot more sort of military green. I think this is Bravo. I'm gonna put the shades that I've used in each of these looks in the description box below just to make it easier for you all to figure out what shades they are. And then bringing that shade under the lower lash and going back into the lighter shade with a flat brush and just brushing it here to diffuse that deeper shade. Now with some base booster from BH Cosmetics across on the lower half of my lid. I'm preparing for the shimmer shade. We're doing monotone, so obviously I'm going to use greens, and I have two shimmery greens. If I want more cool toned, I can use this one. If I want more warm toned, I can use that one. Let's go with the warm tone because I just love this shade and I think it's gonna really brighten up the look to use it. Oh, love that. I still have some blending to do, and a lot of times I do the full blending at the very end, but for now I'm gonna go with a pointy headed brush into this shade that has a shift of a green. It might look cream on your screen, and this shade is reserved for my inner corner. I know there is another shade from Sydney Grace called Green Mist, I think is the name. I also have that one. But to me, this shade is ideal for this kind of a look. And it's very, very unique. It's more unique than the other one. And I'm going to bring on the lower half and kind of try to mix it with what I have under my lower lash line. You can go back with that first brush and try to blend this part to mix the edge of the shimmer and the mattes. And this is the completed look. Once I'm done with the other eye, I'll bring the camera closer and show you both looks from close up. But this is our green monotone. But let's now kind of try to do a blue monotone. With this fluffy brush, I'm gonna go into the blue, into my crease. In general, this eye for me is a little more difficult to blend because I'm right-handed than this eye, which is why this eye in general ends up becoming a little patchier. That's just how it is. I'm gonna try to blend it as much as I can, but there's only so many hours in a day that I have. Now I'm actually using a Sydney Grace brush, and for deepening it out, I'm gonna use this bluish gray. Not entirely blue, but definitely with a hint of blue. Also beauties, I'm purposefully keeping these looks to super simple to demonstrate to you can easily make very colorful looks with these Sydney Grace shades. Now coming under my lower lash. Now using the H across here. Now I'm gonna go into this blue shade that has a shift of gold, and that shift of gold is automatically gonna change the look. Kind of putting it at the center. You could do a halo or you could just do a cross. And although the formula of how I did these two looks is more or less the same, because the colors are different and because I used a lot more deep colors in this eye look, it just overall looks different. Separate from the fact that it's very cool toned, whereas in the other look, I have this beautiful warm toned green. I'm going to go into buttercream with a flat-headed brush, and I'm going to use it to really blend these edges and also use it to blend the lower lash area. You could also use buttercream in the inner corner. I'm trying to not do the exact thing that I did in the other eye on this eye. So I'm done. And these are the two looks. Let me bring the camera closer to show you these from close up. For our third look, I want to do something a little neutrally. So with a fluffy brush, I'm gonna go into this orange, and this is going in my crease again, trying to do super simple looks to show you the versatility of the types of looks you can do with this palette without too much effort. Now for your outer V, you could use this one, which has a dab of plum, but you know what? I wanna actually use a shimmer in my outer V. I know, not something I do frequently, not something that's super recommended, but hey, why not? And I'm kind of blending it as much as I can into that orange to diffuse the orange so the look doesn't look super colorful. Again, the point of this look is for it to be neutral. And then I'm going to bring this under my lower lash line. I'm just going to directly go into this one, the taupey one, and put it right there. You could do the same look without using the orange if you don't even want that hint of color, or you could use this color, which would also remove the hint of color and make it super, super cool toned. And before I finalize this look, I'm gonna take a fluffy brush, go into buttercream. Buttercream is a color that I love because it's not fully matte, it's also not fully shimmer, but it's great for these kinds of things. And I'm gonna just diffuse this. And the look is done. You could do a cat eye. I would recommend a liner with this kind of an eyeshadow. It definitely goes with me at least. Maybe because I'm not a one shimmer kind of a person or an all shimmer kind of a look, and this is kind of an all shimmer look because I've almost covered the matte altogether. But I'm liking it, and it is a pretty neutral look. And now we're going to do an analogous look on this eye. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch my second color theory video. I'm going to tag it on the screen and in the description box below. We're going to start with the lavender shade in the crease. For this one, we're going to do blue and purple, and also bringing the lavender under my lower lash. With a flat-headed brush, I'm going into the blue, and I'm using this shade across my lid. I'm gonna just cover my whole lid with it. And very lightly and carefully, I'm bringing this shade of blue under my lower lash line too, just making sure I'm not gonna blind myself. I'm just drawing it as close to my lash line as I can, and I'm pretty happy with that. Now my next move is to use this beautiful lavender shimmer. Now one thing I could do is to put it in the inner corner, but for the purpose of this look, I want to put it at the center here. And before doing that, I'm going to use a little bit of base booster. Also beauties. I am wearing Peach Bellini from Cliona on my nails. I think it's from their Saison d'Amour collection. It's a beautiful, beautiful summery shade. You could also use this one if you wanted, but I want to lighten up the look, so I want something shimmery and do this like that. Going back with the blue to clean up the edges. And before being completely done, I'm going to go into this buttercream shade and lighten up the inner corner. And the look is done. You could make the part where I put the lavender shimmer larger or smaller, or as I said, you could put it in the inner corner instead. Let me now bring the camera closer and show you this look from close up. You should be able to see a little bit of patchiness up there. And as I mentioned, I think that is because I'm right-handed. It's more difficult for me to blend that area with my right hand because I have to reach over. We're back for the final look, and for this one, I want to use complements, specifically red and green. So let's get to that. I'm getting started with this fluffy, and I'm going to go into the yellow. I'm going to do another video about a few techniques you can use when dealing with complements, and one of those is to use a shade that on the color wheel stands between the two shades, and in this case we're going to use yellow. I put the yellow in my crease. Now I'm going to go into this red with a relatively flat-headed brush, and I'm going to put it in my outer V, deepening this area. I'm going to use a little bit of base booster and take this kind of across. And I'm going to start with this beautiful fiery red. And I'm going to tap, tap, tap over that shimmer. And similarly on this side. And now I'm going to go into the green. And I'm going to put the green over there. So let's do it. Now you might tell me, but Shaz, aren't they gonna muddy? There is a possibility that when they blend, you might get a little bit of a weird color, but not always. So in this case, you also see a little bit of a color difference, but I'm not bothered by that. I'm gonna play with that and use that to my advantage. Now that we're doing this, let's just use some of this orange for my lower lash line, because why not? And there you go. And just to pizzazz things up a little more, I'm going to pick one of these and brighten up the inner corner with this one. You could use the other one, but I don't want it to be super green, so I'm just going to use this one. You could also use the yellow. I also don't want it to be super warm, otherwise I would have used the yellow. And I think that's done, and I'm liking that. If you wanted to deepen it out a little more, you could use a little bit of either this shade or that shade in the outer V. This one looks like it's a very, very, very deep plum, so it should be fine being mixed with the red, and that one is a shimmery brown, so you should not have a problem. Because the main point of this look is the eyeshadow, I went ahead and just put this Romand lip gloss. Actually, it is a glassing melting balm on my lips in the color Nougat Sand. A friend sent me this, and I'm kind of liking it. I also think it's pretty nice and hydrating for the lips, which is something I always need. Now let me bring the camera closer and show you this look from close up. Beauties, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing if you're not subscribed yet. Also, don't forget to write to me below what are your favorite shades from Sydney Grace. Maybe I should add them to my purchase list if I don't have them. I love you all. Have an amazing day, and until next time. Bye.